podcast. Needs a trip to Hawaii.
From the Chris Wesseling Podcast Studio, it's Around the NFL. I'm Dan Hanzus. We're not going anywhere.
No.
Nowhere.
Well, we are going somewhere. London.
Yeah, we are. Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler. It is
I hope.
the long-promised Around the NFC in 48 Minutes show. How exciting is that for all the fans of the National Football Conference?
I mean, there are people out that they're just like diehard NFC fans. Like you put one of those interconference matchups
they don't watch
on
that.
there, they're like, oh, Titans? No.
Marc, this
There
is
aren't
your
really
time to
fans
talk
like
on
that.
the show. Welcome to the podcast, Marc.
Hello, how are you? I was just thinking about Hawaii.
Yeah.
I don't think the three of us would go together. We would pick
We
other
would
people
take
to go.
different islands. I take Hawaii.
I
That would
think
be
we
my
could.
draft
I
pick.
think we could share an island. I mean, we're
No.
sharing a city.
Different humans would be.
This is a funny moment. We did a live hit with Mike Yam. I call him the Yammer on NFL Network, and I was pumping up the Jets, as I'm known to do this time of year. And Gregg wanted to really zing the old Zeuser at the end, and he said, "Hey, man, you're such a Jets homer. Look, you're even wearing a green shirt." I'm wearing a gray NFL Network polo. Colorblind guy blew it on live TV.
You know what? No one even noticed.
Well, no. It was such a bizarre comment because you're just an adult who got a color wrong to a striking degree. Where Mike Yam said nothing, I said nothing, Dan said nothing until after.
Well, green, gray. I'd throw like the blue grays in there. It definitely in my biggest weak spot area, so it hit me where it hurts. But I think it's important. I've talked on this show many times about the underrepresentation of the struggles of colorblind, the community out there. And this was just another example. So I think there's a little kid out there, 10 years old, maybe he doesn't even know there's something wrong with him. And he's like, yeah, that is green. Or he's like, finally, like someone in a real position of success that's overcome his obstacle of colorblindness.
A real position of success.
Yeah.
I like that. Isn't it? It is cool, though, Marc, because we've gotten to know Gregg quite well over the past 10 years, that there's one thing in the world that Gregg cannot have any takes on. He can't have any strong opinions. He can't talk color. He just can't do it.
Yeah,
He's
but
out.
even in this hit, he did have a strong opinion about it and used it. He
wrong one.
weaponized it. Right. He did,
I had prefaced that with many different Jets comments that Dan's a homer. Oh, like
Sure am.
shocker, he picked the Jets
Greg,
as a
I say
surprise
this. I say
playoff
this
team.
seriously to you.
Yes.
You have a slight disability, and
Yes.
it is not right for Dan or Marc to poke fun at you about that. It is your body, and your body is functioning in your own way.
Thank you.
It's a
Marc.
failure of your body.
See, that's
I find
mature.
it to
That's
be
mature
funny.
friendship.
I think it's funny that you can't see colors.
That's mature.
That's
I
the wrong
can
approach,
see it.
Dan.
See, it's not true. I can see them. They're just the shades are all
You're like
off.
a big
I see
golden
'em
retriever
wrong.
looking at a world that's all black and white.
I just see
It's
them all
hilarious.
wrong.
This is not 1993, Dan. Times have changed now. You must respect people's
I'll be
ups
careful.
and downs.
I'm going to rein it in. All right, we got a
Big show.
Let's
Big
check
show.
in with Gravedigger, by the way. We got terrible news.
Right.
You know, we have our issues with Titans fans, and they come at me. I know they've come at you guys at different times. Gravedigger just learned that Harold Landry tore his ACL, and I could tell you're in a bad place. I've been there, bro. I've been there. I know where you're coming from, and I just want to say it's going to be a tough day at the office, but we got your back.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. It's just a crucial piece of the defense, that guy that can do everything. But hey, next man up, life goes on, right?
You're dying.
I mean, he was one of the highest paid edge players in
Just
the
got an
league.
extension.
That's how much they believe in him. It is a position with a lot of questions right now.
Yeah, big time.
Isn't
The Chuckle Monsters, that was their name, right?
Tickle
Tickle
monsters.
Tickle Monsters,
Come on.
they must forge on.
They
Because
must.
that's what a Tickle Monster and its fellow Tickle Monsters would choose to do.
Isn't that the great thing and the worst thing about being a true sports fan? You don't know Harold Landry. It doesn't really change your life one way or the other about the Titans this season, how they do. And yet it just crushes us when something like that happens.
Yeah.
Well, you can feel empathy as a human, I think, even if you don't know them personally.
Upside.
Right.
Titans,
Yes. I
they
agree
need
with
some
that.
help at wide receiver. Sign Josh Gordon.
They did sign Josh Gordon to the practice squad. They only have 4 receivers on the active roster.
He also was a model citizen in Kansas City. And by the way, what he ever only did wrong in Cleveland, essentially the entire country's allowed to do at this point. So maybe he can help a wide receiver.
I will not push back on that at all. I think Gordon deserved to play more than he did during that prime portion of his career. But I can't have any more Josh Gordon conversations. When's the last time he made like a play?
He caught a pass for Kansas City in the last 2 years, I think.
I mean, yeah.
This is a good spot for him.
He had his chances.
Sure.
But yes, I think.
So was the last place. And the last place before that.
I have more faith still in the Titans' defense and their defensive front. I think that's the strength of their team than I do with their wide receiver core, with or without Josh Gordon. So
Yeah.
I don't
Gregg,
think it's going to make a big difference.
Are there any edge rushers from your top 100 still out there that the Titans could kick the tires
working
on?
through it.
I'm going to go look. You know what? They just signed Trey Flowers in Miami, which I thought was a really nice move. He could still play the guitar, as Dan would say, last year. A lot of injuries, but I thought that was a nice move. But they did that last week, so I don't know if anyone's left.
I heard that Marc Gastineau is staying in shape, former pass rusher of the Jets. He's 65, but...
You know, my list only has 5 players left. It does not include any edge rushers. Odell Beckham, number 11 on the list, still out there. Will Fuller, of course. Eric Fisher is not with a team yet. That's interesting. Sheldon Richardson, Ndamukong Suh, Kevin King, the cornerback from the Packers, never got signed, and Donta Hightower without a job.
Got to make a trade.
Yep.
Make a move. All right, let's now pivot. It's time.
Someone give Suh a contract. I know he was looking for $8 or $9 million, but he was still playing pretty well in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, he seems like because he's friends with who's he friends with? Who was it?
Probably multiple people. I don't know.
No, there's a notable billionaire that he's like tight with.
He was a Warren Buffett
guy. I was going to say Lee Iacocca for some reason.
Warren
Buffett. I get a feeling that Sue's like, I'm not playing unless I get paid above market value.
That is what
He's a money
it
guy.
sounds like, yeah.
All right, let's get to it. Around the AFC Monday. Now around the NFC begins now with, yes, the NFC South. Panthers, Gregg Rosenthal.
Okay, Carolina Panthers are a team that I think comes down to their offensive line. Teddy Bridgewater and Sam Darnold played behind what I would say was a bottom 3 offensive line in aggregate the last 2 years. It is almost all new right now, but the coaching staff is still there. They're thin at the skill position. Like, their defense, we'll see. Do we trust Matt Rule to coach up a better offensive line? Were the moves enough? Ekonwu really struggled in the preseason, was a little bit of a red flag game against the Patriots. He's their high pick. They have another pick, Christensen, who's now moving to left guard. They have a journeyman, Pat Elflein, at center. That looks like a problem. And another journeyman at right guard. If that offensive line is bad, then any optimism, I believe, about the Panthers goes by the wayside.
Well, and Baker Mayfield in Cleveland was fortunate enough for most of that time to play behind a top 2 or 3 line in the NFL. There were moments, though, when injuries mounted. I can think of that 2019 season where when the heat was on. I mean, he struggled mightily. Where the fact it changed everything you thought about Baker Mayfield under pressure.
That's his number one thing is he holds the ball to make a play, and that works for Russell Wilson, and it worked for Baker Mayfield at various points.
Yeah.
And, Baker obviously is also not a large man. He's not a big quarterback, so he's a lot of vision issues sometimes when the pass rush is collapsing in on him. So that is, with so many teams, offensive line obviously is a big question mark. But they're due to have some proficiency. And obviously, if Christian McCaffrey is back as well, there is like a squint where you could see this offense doing some things.
I agree. I think Matt Rule, and it's partly based on the Teddy year where they moved the ball very well and just couldn't finish drive. His offense makes sense to me. Now, they're very thin. They have more Robbie Anderson, McCaffrey. Oh, that's pretty good. And most teams have more exciting players. You could get
DJ Moore for what I like. DJ Moore.
Right, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, McCaffrey. But that's 3 guys. You need more guys. They traded for Laviska Shenault this week. That kind of shows they're a little desperate. They like your boy Hollywood Higgins. Maybe he helps out. But that's it. If they have one injury there, then it gets grisly.
I do think they have a string of nice parts on defense, too. And the defense last year really was a difference maker for a stretch, and everything just sort of crumbled. I mean, crumbled around bad quarterback play. I do think that Baker Mayfield is an upgrade. If he's protected and these weapons around him work, Baker Mayfield, I think, has been devalued because of what happened this offseason. People are forgetting some of the higher moments. He can do this.
I do want to mention J.C. Horn, their top pick a year ago, looked fantastic for 3 games, got hurt, and then missed the entire season. But he could be a really big factor for them.
Hey, they got Browns and Giants out of the gate. Of course, Browns without Deshaun Watson. After that, Saints, Cards, Niners, Rams, Bucks. So they're in a lot of trouble if they don't win at least. The Bucks, Mark.
I want you to rank these 3 items in terms of concern level, P-scale level, surrounding the Bucks right now. Item 1, Tom Brady's state of mind and all this jazz about the drama behind the scenes in his personal life, etc., and what it might mean to a plugged-in Tom Brady. Item 2, the idea that simply assuming Todd Bowles can be Bruce Arians is entirely unproven. Item 3, the loss of center Ryan Jensen and guard Aaron Stinney along the offensive line when we saw what happened to Brady and sort of the offense in general when there were line issues end of last season.
All right, I got the line number 1. So important. Got an old quarterback. I know he's very good on his feet, but he's not fast. If the line's bad, they're going to struggle. 2 was Bowles. Is he Arians? I don't think he needs to be Arians. You have Byron Leftwich in the building. He's running the offense that Bruce Arians ran. So you just need Bowles to be competent and get the defense coached up, in my mind. 3, nebulous, the Tom Brady situation. Don't really know what's going on. There's some reports and gossip out there about his personal life, but I can't get too pumped up about it right now because I just don't know enough.
Are you glad, though, I didn't spend the entire segment on Tom Brady's misadventures?
I would have gone whatever road you wanted to go.
You want to rank that first?
No, I would rank.
Yes.
I would rank offensive line first. I think that's how the offense functions. I think the Tom Brady thing for me is second.
You sure you want to flip those?
I don't, because when that press conference shook me when it came to how I thought I saw a lost,
it's interesting though, because
individual.
I went and watched that press conference, and I didn't have like a weird takeaway. My takeaway was just like he really seems to be sad that he won't be playing football again a year from now, or at least he's in that mindset. And he was like talking about like it felt like a retirement speech, which was a strange frame of mind, to be fair.
What you just said there, I agree with that last part.
When I saw the press conference, the only thing that crossed my mind is, why does he look like he's 28? He looks so young.
Right. I'm like, item 1, I couldn't be less concerned about, not about him as a human, but more about his ability throughout the last 20 years to compartmentalize, and if anything, seemingly draw strength from any drama that's going on.
Think of Deflategate.
And be better. The offensive line is to me, the concern. I am curious on week 1, though. Like, how does that defense look? Let's just see.
I definitely don't know making light of anything in his personal life, but just to show that how strong he is. You remember the one year, I think it was the 28-3 year, his mother was very ill, and that was hanging over him the entire season, and he came out and delivered one of the great playoff runs ever. He's just wired differently.
It's sort of like us when the lights go on, no matter what happened before a show.
No matter what happened
just
before the
switch.
show. No matter what happened.
Pros that are bros. That's what Dan says.
Mark, sticking with you, Saints. Oh, we should say that Claybon was supposed to be on the show. We teased that. Couldn't make it. Personal issues, nothing to do with Giselle. Go ahead, Mark.
Right. Oh, yeah. Hence, I will handle the Saints.
Daycare coming up small in a big spot for Claybon. Hopefully they don't listen.
I found this interesting.
Giselle's daycare? She owns the daycare? But it wasn't
I have
Giselle
a point, too.
Specifically. Okay, sorry,
I will
Mark,
take
go
care
ahead.
of children. All right. Of 43 writers at The Athletic, all 43 picked the Bucks to win the South. I found that interesting because not around these parts were the three of us. 3 out of 4 yesterday. Steve Weiss, Gregg, and myself picked New Orleans to win the division. I think a lot of that has to do, for me, with a roster that's gnarly on defense, even without Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They're much better at wide receiver this year, but also for me, it's what they did last year.
Gnarly in a positive way.
In a great
Rare.
way. Yeah, kind of like an 86.
Okay.
Like, well, that's wicked gnarly. Like that kind of thing. But also for me, I think what they did against the Bucks last year and the way that conflict between those two teams went down, and really what they've been for a long time. But are we massively overlooking 2 items? A potential nuclear winter-esque fly in the ointment I'm talking about. 1, you've replaced Sean Payton with Dennis Allen. TBD on that. 2, a full season of Jameis Winston remains a question mark. So you've got a big question at head coach and at least a question at quarterback. Those are 2 big questions, and yet I still believe. Do you?
I do believe. I do think there's a lot of variance.
Oh, you
with
believe
this
in
team.
the Saints, Greg?
I do believe there's variance that it could go terribly. Like if you tell me that they go 6-11 and it's messy, I feel like that's part of their potential outcomes. But I also think 12-5 and winning the division is. So I'm not totally in. But the reasons you gave, Mark, actually aren't where I'm concerned. I think Pete Carmichael and the consistency on their offense is going to be just fine. And I think Jameis in that offense is going to be good. And if he's not, I like that they have two pretty solid quarterbacks there with Dalton behind him. So that's not where my area of concern is.
Yeah, I think on this podcast, I think something similar is happening with the Texans. We were talking about it the other day, that I hate the Texans. It's more, I don't, and I think they could be improved. It's more when you two guys start gassing each other up for an entire summer about a team, I just feel naturally inclined to, like, let's tap the brakes a little bit.
You often play this role. It's sometimes Wes was part of the twosome that liked the team. Whoever it is, you like to pump the brakes guy.
It's more like the certainty in which we speak of the Saints on the show.
I'm not. I just said they could all blow
I know.
up.
Now you're backing off a little bit, but I'm saying in general, the idea, the things that you brought up, Mark, are very vital pieces of this conversation. And yes, call me crazy, and I know in the small sample size that Winston did some things before he got hurt. But by the way, he also got hurt, and he's coming back from a torn ACL. A lot of things have to go right for the Saints in key places to be beating out Tom Brady for the NFC South. That's why I didn't pick them. I picked the Bucs, but I also have the Saints as a playoff team. So I'm hedging my bet a little bit, you could say.
Oh,
I think they'll be good.
Team, that's good.
But you guys seem to talk about them like they're a Super Bowl contender, and I'm not there.
The one thing I would always say, Sean Payton's going to win you a couple games a year because he's Sean Payton. I do think that to go from that to Dennis Allen, I'm not just talking about the offense, but the overall management of the team. I don't think Chauncey Gardner is on another team right now if Sean Payton is there. I just don't.
Ooh. I like that.
Safety Marcus May arrested.
And I'm going to make use of my first timeout
Oh.
in history of the show. Just because I did want to mention Marcus May getting arrested, his diversity in terms of his skill set, along with Honey Badger, they were probably confident in. And now he just gave away Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Oh, he didn't talk to the coaches for 2 days. We have to give him away for nothing. Just have to do it. But the reason I took a timeout.
I don't think they're going to ship Marcus May to Alcatraz, by the way.
No, I don't
it's
know.
It's like a road rage thing.
He could potentially get suspended at some point. That's fair. I did just want to say the reasons why I would be a little concerned is combustible personalities, kind of like you mentioned with Dennis Allen and everything. It's more that defenses are traditionally inconsistent. They've been so good on defense, and I think if you look at their pass rush, they're counting on Marcus Davenport, who's had a shaky preseason, to stay healthy. Peyton Turner, their number 1 overall draft pick this year, they're using, they're concerned there. Some of the fans, the B word, like he has not shown up. Cameron Jordan is up there in years. Then you look at their defensive tackle, very thin at behind Onyemata. And yes, their secondary is deep, and Allen kind of believes he can coach up anyone, and there's a lot of good players. But Matthew and May are new guys. Like they're replacing 2 great safeties in Gardner-Johnson and Marcus Williams, and that's a lot of turnover. So my concern is more that the defense won't be special, that there's at least a chance of that, and then things get gnarly in a negative way.
I like what you said. I admire what you said, Greg. I do wonder, is in the world of the timeout scenario, do you take a timeout to continue the same topic we were just discussing?
Yeah,
I wanted to get that point in here.
Yeah, I think, Greg, a little off base there with your timeout.
Well, this is maybe why no one's ever been allowed to take timeouts in the history of the show.
It was a value add.
Now.
It was a value
least
add.
fun timeout we've ever had, that's for sure.
Fair.
All right, time in.
But did the listener get smarter?
I think
hope
they did.
so.
I think
hope
I
so.
said it was a value add.
Absolutely. Let's hit the Falcons, the final team in the South. My spidey senses are tingling a little bit that Marcus Mariota, who's not getting a lot of talk this offseason, is going to surprise some people this year. And I'm not like a huge Mariota guy, and I'm trying not to put too much into that one game he had on Thursday Night Football with the Raiders, but I kind of do.
That's pretty awesome.
And then I texted Weish this morning because I did want to ask Weish, because he's connected, obviously, to the Falcons, about what he was seeing and hearing about Mariota. And he had some spicy stuff. First of all, he said he's a Jimmy G caliber human being. He says he's in a different headspace now.
I love that. That's like
that's the
that's the measurement.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the measurement of humanity.
He's in a different headspace than he was when he kind of got gifted the job as a number 2 overall pick with Tennessee. He's in a good place. He runs the offense well. He moves in the pocket, obviously much better than Matt Ryan. He's been great with the kid Ritter in the quarterback room. So Mariota at this point in his career feels like this would be a point with Arthur Smith where he could surprise some people and have a nice year.
I think Arthur Smith is going to
got to stay healthy.
Yeah, I think he's going to FedEx some weirdness into the playbook.
Nicely done.
I really think that the Falcons, first of all, I think Arthur Smith doesn't really get the credit he should for what happened last year. They won more games than they would have with a different coaching staff, with 0 parts. If Drake London works out, if Cordero Patterson can redo what he did last year and be used that way, Kyle Pitts, I don't hate this offense. And I think you're going to get a lot of Mariota on the ground. I think we're going to see Desmond Ridder at some point too, because they love him as well. And so I just hope that the organization has patience, because the defense still to me is a mess in a lot of ways. But the offense is going to be creative and fun to watch. They were last year.
They were, and yet their offensive line was totally unaddressed. It was kind of crazy. Like, they brought in some competition, but the guys that they brought in didn't win them. So Caleb McGarry, who's been a problem, is still their right tackle. Matt Hennessy is in a battle at center. They're starting a journeyman, Elijah Wilkinson. It doesn't look good. I want to use some time, though, just because we never talk to the Falcons. Like, this is the most unknown team in the NFL. Here are just some players playing for the Falcons this year. Brian Edwards looks like he's going to be splitting a starting job with Kadero Hodge. A man who is playing professional lacrosse, this is not a joke, Jared Bernhardt had never played wide receiver in his life until this summer, made the roster as a wide receiver.
That's concerning.
Does he know Chris Hogan?
Their edge rushers right now, their starting edge rushers are Lorenzo Gardner and a rotation of rookie Arnold Ebiketie and Ogadunije is his last name. Those are their edge rushers. Kind of a nice-looking secondary on paper with A.J. Terrell, but about as unknown a team as you got.
Yeah, that's why I can't pound the table for the Falcons being a playoff team. But Drake London, it's a lot of pressure to put on a rookie wide receiver. If he's good, dart me. If he's good, if he hits the ground running with Pitts taking that next leap, Mariota's got some pieces to work with Patterson there too. All right, enough. I get it. You're upset about Landry. It stinks. I agree. But we got to stay professional. Let's take a break. Be right back. All right, here we go. The NFC East as we go around the NFC in 48 minutes exactly. Marc, the Cowboys.
I found another area where this show does not agree with The Athletic, which is an excellent site to get all your football knowledge. So is NFL.com, by the way. But they have a win total model that has the Cowboys at 10.6 victories. That is tied for third highest in the league, above the Bucs, above a bunch of other, obviously a bunch of other teams.
Schedule-related, certainly.
Yep. 4 games against Washington and New York.
That feels real different to me than the vibe on this show, at least coming the way I feel. I am pretty down on the Cowboys. I think the offensive line is a growing mess. They're potentially asking a 40-year-old Jason Peters to save the day. We'll see what happens there. You're essentially left crossing your fingers. You get the full version of Michael Gallup, although it does sound like his rehab's going well, along with CeeDee Lamb, but then you're asking Jalen Tolbert to successfully fill the void after that. They're really thin at wide receiver after Amari Cooper was traded away for like a My Little Pony figurine. It's an absurd trade. Now you got the owner jawing about the fact that we're going to get more Ezekiel Elliott than anyone's asking for at this point, and less Michael Pollard. And I think during a very rocky offseason for Dallas, their arch enemy, the Eagles, have turned into this NFC darling. So you tell me why none of this matters, and they'll still win 10.6 games.
Weish on the show on Wednesday, when he started getting pumped about the defense and Parsons as a guy that's generational talent, I was like, ooh, we're getting a little sucked into the anti-hype turbines of the Cowboys here this year. Like, because they're going to score points, I think. Maybe not as many points as they've scored in past years.
Right, that's your answer.
But if their defense is really good,
and they have Zach Martin, a future Hall of Famer,
right,
and they have a great on paper defense.
If their defense is really good, let's say it is, then the Cowboys offense doesn't have to carry the load. And if they're just proficient or a little better than average, yeah, that is a ticket to like 10 wins.
I just don't love teams where that's what we're saying about them 10
I
days
agree
before
with
opening
that.
Sunday.
I agree with that. DeMarcus Lawrence, though, if he's who we think he's going to be, Sam Williams, a rookie. They kept all their guys in the secondary, and they're not big names behind Trayvon Diggs, but they are young and have a lot of continuity. Malik Hooker and Jaron Kearse played well for them. I'm just surprised they didn't do more. They have all this cap space. We talked about the Cooper thing, but they haven't filled that offensive line. Like, they didn't make a splashy move there. They didn't make another splashy move at wide receiver.
Well, they were hamstrung for a bunch of that cap issue seemed to be the one team where the cap stuff affected Dallas to make stuff.
But they have a ton of cap space.
Now,
what am I missing? So I'm just saying, even now, like, they seem like a team that would make a trade for an offensive line. Maybe they will in the season, or a receiver, or another.
Except
even
that Jerry Jones
tackle.
always seems to see a Super Bowl team no matter what is happening in reality.
Are you referring to like the trade of Cooper, that they didn't take that salary cap space that created and use it? Is that what they're sitting on, basically?
Ultimately, yeah.
Maybe
and
they
have
got a
these
bigger
holes.
plan.
That's why they had to make that. That's why they made that Cooper move. Like that's. I don't
Maybe
know.
they need to keep things like that open for Micah Parsons extensions. Things like that. I know. Sorry. Eagles. Gregg.
Okay.
Gravedigger smiling back there about all the trigger-happy gunshot
I've
wounds.
spoken enough why I love the two deep on this roster, how tough they'll be to defend with. I think A.J. Brown's going to have a monster season. I think their running game is going to be awesome with Hurts. But I am curious what they're going to look like schematically on both sides of the ball. They went from kind of like typical Nick Sirianni, like the way they looked in Indianapolis, short passing game, to so run heavy in the middle of last season. What does that look like this year? And then on defense, they were as conservative and vanilla a defense. Just keep the ball in front of you. Don't do anything else. Force long drives and hope like our offense can win. Kind of slow down the game on defense. Very conservative, almost boring. Now they have all this talent. So I'm just curious how the Eagles are going to approach this schematically on both sides of the ball. That to me is a big question.
I remember like Fletcher Cox sort of voicing annoyance with that that tone on defense. That is the Jonathan Gannon way to some degree.
But now they got some fiery players here with they got better players in the back end, certainly.
You know what I learned about Sirianni? Because a year ago we're just like, this guy does not understand press conferences. We didn't know much about him, but like they will adjust. I think they've got the people to do it. But like when they made that shift to run heavy, I love teams that do that. It's like whatever we're doing is not working. Let's just change everything. I expect them to be, especially with A.J. Brown in the fold, a much more balanced team. They were able to get rid of Jalen Reagor because they've got wideout strength now. They've got good situation at tight end. And I think Jalen Hurts is going to be asked to do more than just run as much as he did a year ago.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big questions I have, because I understand it's justified that people that are excited about the Eagles this year, because they did make the playoffs and then they got the roster better, and it's another year for the quarterback in the system and his maturity, and he has a lot of upside. But is he somebody that could take advantage of a guy like A.J. Brown? Is he have that in him as a passer to take the next step? Because if he does, if Hurts takes that next step, yeah, this is an NFC powerhouse potentially.
I love it. I love the pass rush. Like, I love the Jordan Davis, I think, would be talked about if he was on some other team a lot more. Like, Javon Hargrave is coming off a monster season. I think Kaiser White is a linebacker, that position they've struggled, that they really love. Maybe rookie Nakobe Dean, like Hassan. Maybe it's a little too dream teamish. This is the perfect moment for Eagles homers like me.
I think it's
Because
better.
Eagles homer?
I mean, or whatever you want to
So
say.
confused.
You know what I mean? It's like it only can get worse. The depth chart looks so pristine and
That
perfect
dream
now.
team actually just looked good because it was a bum rush of free agent additions. There's this has the best offensive line in football.
Also, we should add
They're good
some
in the trenches.
context there, because there are a lot of listeners, we've been doing this long enough, that don't even know what we're talking about.
The Vince
The
Young,
dream team is-
Namdi Asamoah.
Hook 'em, baby.
It was when
dream
free agency
team.
happened, like midsummer after the lockout ended, and it just created this insane like tornado of signings for the Eagles. But the parts were not actually that special if you looked at them.
Nice summation, bro.
That was dead on. What would you correct from it?
Nothing the G-Men! They're a complete mystery to me as we open the season, because I look at an offensive line that's probably improved. A toolsy, I'll still give it to him, a toolsy young QB with vastly improved coaching. Solid collection of playmakers surrounding that young toolsy QB. And then I think, this could be one of the most improved offenses in football this season. And by the way, that's relative because they were at the floor last year by the time Joe Judge was running out of town. Then I look at the offense from another angle and think Daniel Jones can't play. Saquon is washed. The receivers are overpaid, unproven, or injury-prone. Some all three at once. And a major overhaul is ahead next spring. So if I had to guess, I'd say I'm slightly more confident that they'll surprise some people this year. But this one is a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma sitting on the corner of conundrum and ambiguity.
Oh.
Address that one.
I love that.
Put that one in a little dress.
People say Saquon has looked great.
I put that one in a little dress with a bow on top.
that
of
was
it.
You know
nice.
what film that's from, I hope.
What?
Mystery wrapped inside a riddle, inside an enigma.
I don't know. What is it?
JFK.
Is it really? Mm-hmm. Huh. All right, good take.
It's not a take. It is a fact.
They're not that big of a mystery, and maybe I'll be wrong. So but Football Outsiders, for instance, has them projected as the worst team in the
Football
NFL.
Outsiders decides.
Worst.
I'm just saying they
Offense or
have them
team?
as the worst overall team. So I think they have that potential. Here's a quote talking about the expectations. A quote from their general manager this week, Joe Shane, about the expectations, and he said, "Well, it's the hand that we were dealt. This feels like a transition year. I don't know if we're overrating the preseason, but an offense starring like 3 slot guys, 2 of which are hurt. I like Kadarius Toney, but he's always hurt. Shepard, who's always hurt, and then their rookie Wan'Dale Robinson, and then another guy, Kenny Golladay, who what was the quote?
Oh, so Jordan Renan of ESPN said that Kenny Golladay, in quotes, has been running routes this summer with the stiffness of a mannequin, which if you're new to football, that's not a positive.
So that makes me worried for Daniel Jones, that it's not quite there around him.
What if when the Giants are top 10 offense in November, I knock on the door of the headquarters of Football Outsiders, and I just go,
I think if you just keep screaming that moniker,
I think that would be
that's
great.
all it will
until
take.
security whisks me away.
I think that would be like Aaron Schatz's house. To be fair to them, I think part of it is that they have him as the worst defense in the league. I think the offense was projected to be slightly
That's
more
all
mediocre.
I'm talking about.
Right.
Do not read into me saying I think the Giants
But if they
are
have
a
the worst
playoff
defense,
team.
this is not an offense that maybe makes up for it. And Don Martindale loves to leave his cornerbacks on an island and blitz like crazy. And you look at this team and you're like,
Which team?
the Giants.
No, which team?
The G-Men! You're like, do they have the personnel for that? I don't think so at cornerback.
All right, the Commanders. We're ready to take command on this for the next 3 minutes. Some first-round picks get less buzz than others. I think Jahan Dotson, selected 16th overall, falls in that category. We hear good things about him, that he's a polished route runner, and when you're that, you can hit the ground running in the NFL. Then you factor in a healthy Curtis Samuel, right, who's another playmaker who was laying in the weeds a little bit after a year lost to injury. And then you have the centerpiece here, Terry McLaurin, who I think is like a top 20 receiver, a true number 1. Throwing a little frisky tight end in Logan Thomas. I know he's coming back from injury as well. And I'll just put it this way. You don't have to love the quarterback in Washington, but his cast of playmakers comes with some legit upside. That's what I'll say.
A lot of commanders in Washington, D.C., in the Pentagon.
Theismann's right.
It was partially true last year, too. So you for me, I don't disagree with your point at all.
Samuel, though, was kind of
Samuel was out of the picture,
thought
and you didn't have
rather than a
Dotson.
reality.
But, I mean, Antonio Gibson was a big part of it. For me, it's the defense. I think that Ron Rivera's calling card is I'm going to come in and dominate teams, and we're going to win games 14-10. And the defense last year was the worst third-down defense in the league by various metrics. And in the preseason, they were the worst third-down defense in the league, and gave up the highest conversion rate.
No Chase Young for at least 4 weeks.
Right, you're missing guys, and there is talent on up front on that defense. There's no doubt about it. But they just the year they made the playoffs. Go look at the quarterbacks they faced last year when it was more adjusted and normalized.
And they won 7 games.
They floundered.
To be
right,
fair.
they won 7 games. I'm struggling to see the direction of this team. And a commander should have direction.
Absolutely. You got to take command and have direction to do so. I think this time last year.
As we all know, excited to really go ahead and start to take command.
You got to say it with authority, Carson. Right. Let's do one more take. That's all you need
that
to
was
do.
take 6.
That's
That
on
was
the
take
social.
6.
That's on the social.
That was
team,
Take
though.
7. Take 7. Remember this time last year, they were the buzzy team as laying in the weeds because of their defense. You don't hear that this year.
No, it's kind of Ron Rivera's last stand potentially like as a head coach, but at least for me as like a guy who you really trust can create a defense that's greater than the sum of their parts. And I do think they still have Montez Sweat even before Chase Young returns. Jonathan Allen. They still have some good veterans, I think, in the secondary. Kendall Fuller played well for them. They have William Jackson. I don't think they're talent poor, but he's got to improve their defense right away.
Is it a scheme thing then?
I don't know, because they went from a great defense in 2020 under him to a terrible defense in 2021. And if Rivera's giving you a bad defense again this year, then kind of what are you getting out of him? That's all.
I got to say, we're about to hit 3 minutes. I'm really proud that we went this entire Washington segment without just doing windmill dunks on Carson Wentz.
We've done that all off season.
It's like two-handed thunder dunks, 360 slams.
It's like rock and jock with the trampolines.
Timeout. Let me show Greg's how it's done. Calls timeout to talk more about, what was it?
The Saints
defense.
Oh,
I had points. I wanted to make them. I wrote them and everything.
A huge hit, of course, the Steve Weish theme songs. Really happy with how that turned out. Now, if you remember, we asked listeners also to come up with a new Commander's Fight song. And I had Graver check in.
Oh, I was going to let those sit in the inbox for 18 months. Is that not the plan this time?
No. No comment. I would like to hear just one. Just pick one. I know there were some that were good, some not so hot. Let's just hear one. And if people aren't aware, because of the team name change, they're changing the lyrics. They're keeping the bed music, which is some type of marching band type vibe, I think. Let's hear from a listener. Who is it?
Gregg Scamato. Hope I'm saying that right.
All right.
Scamato.
Hey, Scamato over here.
All right, here we go.
Here we are, it's time to start to take command. There's no question we won't answer. Here we are, we always have the upper hand, without jeopardizing our standards. All our fans are people that you cannot stand. We say we're from DC, but we're from Maryland. Oh, here we are, we're the Washington Commanders.
There are 44 more seconds.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
It's time to start.
We get the picture. That sounds like a hurt Washington fan on some level. There were some digs in there.
None of us are from that area. I didn't know there was a lot of D.C., Maryland.
Well, they do play in Landover, yeah. That makes sense.
Little regional heat.
I enjoyed it. I think the Washington football team over the years has maybe not taken criticism from the media, especially with a lot of grace. So I feel like putting it in their own theme song would be a big step for them.
Yeah, although they're not advocating for this song, but yes.
Yeah, I don't need to hear the second verse of the song, but I would have gotten some stuff in about the Pentagon. I would have. Yeah, you got to get that in up top.
I enjoyed it though. I think it captured the spirit of what we were looking for. It was great.
Marc, it's a 5-sided fortress, and it's essentially. I think you should be genuflecting at the altar of the military headquarters.
A lot of
the
people
United
respect
States.
the Pentagon. I do understand that that's a concept in our country.
Someone on Twitter got really mad at me. They were like, "It's like I really like Gregg in the show, but it's like he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's like Marc has got this covered on the Pentagon." It's like when he's trying to get into politics and really believe in the Pentagon. Wake up, sheeple.
Nailed it.
I really enjoyed that guy.
I think it's time to give the Pentagon the respect it deserves.
I know where you're coming
why
from.
did I become the pro-Pentagon? I feel like it was more Dan, but either way, I'm on Dan's side on this one.
5-sided fortress is what it is.
Oh, a fortress of purity.
It's a temple to defense. All right, time in. Let's move to the NFC North. Gregg, the Bears.
So it's been a lot of negativity, including from me, when it comes to the Bears. So I do want to make the case for the Bears, offensively especially. In general, making the case for the Bears. Because I think every team has a chance. I truly do. And the case here is that it's a different offense. It's Luke Getsy who sprinkles some of that Packers system dust. And that what you saw in the third preseason game, which we haven't spoken about, Justin Fields balled out, showed off his skill set. Phil Wesseling, an Ohio State fan who were very close with Chris's
brother. We'll be hearing
brother.
from the Wesses next week when we make our locks of the week.
Oh, that's
competition.
Good call. And we'll be hearing from him if Fields balls out. that, like, look, Justin Fields is good enough that he can carry a somewhat competent offense into being watchable and exciting. And you do have two weapons to throw to in Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet that I think are really good NFL players. And you could have a good running game in Montgomery and Herbert. And that if Fields is that dude in this new system where that makes the line look better, that he shows enough that you're just like excited, because that's all the Bears have ever wanted is a quarterback. And he can still, if you are truly that guy, I think he could rise above some of the deficiencies.
I think a lot of the critique is the fact that you did this in reverse order. You get your young quarterback, then you have a roster teardown, which a lot of that was on the other side of the ball. But I think you're right, because he looked to me much more comfortable this preseason, and especially in that third game. And Cole Kmet and he have had really good chemistry, and so Cole Kmet develops into a real weapon. I think there's just a lack of depth at wide receiver, and you just can't march into an NFL season with one guy and then maybe hoping the other guys project into something more. But they could be in a much better place a year from now too, roster-wise.
If Equan St. Brown can step up, but he didn't with Aaron Rodgers. If Byron Pringle, if he gets in the mix,
these are just guys.
But like he didn't with Patrick Mahomes. It just feels like they're missing some dudes.
Right, and I guess I was going to continue to make the case. It would kind of be like Fields shows enough, and he's good enough as a second-year quarterback to help elevate. And that, look, it's a defensive coach who did draft for defense, and the defense helps them stay in games. And at least you feel like it's headed in the right direction. That's all that matters. Like, if we leave this season saying, like, Justin Fields is a starting quarterback in the NFL, I think everyone's going to be happy.
And they have, like, $4 billion worth of cap space next offseason.
Right. He needs a long runway for an evaluation. And I just hope that we're not talking about next summer. When is he going to get a real chance to show whether he can play or not? I worry about that for Fields.
The line looks terrible on paper, and so you're just hoping maybe it'll be coaching that makes them better. That happens sometimes, and we don't know this coaching staff, but it doesn't happen.
The number 2 wide receiver is Equan St. Brown right now?
Equanimous. Byron
Felix
Pringle,
Jones.
but he's been hurt. Yeah, those are their 2 and their 3. Probably Pringle if he's healthy.
The Lions. If we are buying into the idea of the Lions making a year 2 leap, are we? I thought that would be more of a thing, but I'm not sensing it really. But if we are, then we are believing that the quarterback is going to have some measure of success. I want to talk a little Jared Goff. He's having a great camp. If you don't believe me, listen to Liev Schreiber.
If anyone needs the AC, it's Jared Goff. He's been hot all camp.
Again, that was from Hard Knocks. He looks good. He has a good command of the offense. He's got some decent players around him. Absolutely nobody, and I mean nobody, looking over his shoulder in that QB room. Would I be stunned if Goff puts up nice numbers this year? No, I would not be stunned. He's got to stay healthy, but I think he can. And if he does, it'd be interesting to see if that gums up the Lions' thought process come next spring when it's time to take the quarterback we all expect. I think that's how it ends. I think Jared Goff from the very beginning has been a bridge. But what if he balls out? Do you start to think about Goff as more of a long-term answer?
It's meant to be a good draft for quarterbacks, number one. So I think if the Lions, they've got to be cutthroat. And
he can't be okay. He needs to be like very close to the Rams version.
It could get Jared Goff a starting job somewhere else. But what I like the offense he's in Detroit right now, and it's probably the kind of offense where he's going to thrive, because I would say you've got a top 3 offensive line. They're built that way. Amon-Ra St. Brown turned into a star in year 1. Jamison Williams, when he emerges, that's another weapon right there. TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, I think is like the next version of Austin Eckler. So it's like you got the parts on offense. I would almost say there isn't really an excuse for Jared Goff to have a bad season or one of his lower seasons.
I think he could have a really good season. I don't know if that'd move him off the quarterback market, but I think they could win enough games that it makes it trickier. One of my favorite things about the Lions last year, and I am in on them being frisky, I think it's mostly on offense, was that Dan Campbell embrace that they were kind of an offense-first team at some point last year. Remember, it started with that Rams game where Goff played pretty well in Los Angeles. There was a 29-27 win over the Vikings. That was their first one. They had a 30-12 win over the Cardinals. There was a 51-29 loss to the Seahawks, but I remember it was back and forth. There was a 37-30 win over the Packers backups at the end. I think they could be a fun offensive team, and I think Campbell will embrace whatever it takes to win, and that's what it's going to take, I think, for this team. Offense first.
I am buying in a little bit. I just want, you know what? I think they changed my feelings about Hard Knocks. They certainly changed my feelings about who they are from a coaching staff angle. I think it's one of the more creative, young coaching staffs in the league, and that matters.
They're deep defensively up front, too. They're not even going to have their second-round pick, Pascal, and Okwara at the beginning of the season.
Rodrigo is a great Hard Knocks underdog story. He's a 6th-round pick that could start for them.
I think he's starting.
The Green Bay Packers, they're on tugboat timeout. Good thing Gregg is talking about them.
Why are they on tugboat timeout?
You don't know about tugboat timeout?
You don't believe in them or something?
Are you going to say anything during this 3 minutes?
Yeah, I don't need. You know what? I'm not going to say anything. Because they're on tugboat timeout,
which makes it even tougher on Mark and I.
I get to take a timeout?
For some reason, they haven't started the clock. I don't think that's how the tugboat timeout works.
Have you branded a tugboat timeout?
Sessy stop.
Too late. I already took them. You have to do a Sessy stop for a different team.
No, that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't leave Gregg by himself. I mean,
well, that's Gregg's dream.
Probably be fine.
That is not my dream. I look at this team defensively and think you can make a case.
Green Bay timeout.
Just waiting for it.
You can make a case that they're among the best defensive teams personnel-wise in the NFL, like a top 3 to 5 defense. They just didn't produce like that last year, and I don't know if there's depth, but just that's Dan making a lot of noise, taking off his headset. Just for the audio listeners, you can check us out on YouTube too and see it. Every single position is potentially filled by an above-average starter. The secondary's dynamite with Jair Alexander back, and their safeties. They love Eric Stokes. They gave Rasul Douglas that money. Quay Walker's their rookie, who's playing linebacker, improving kind of a weak spot, and they love what he's done in camp. They're really deep around Kenny Clark now in terms of their pass rush. 1 to 11, Mark, there's a lot to love on defense. Can Joe Barry kind of deliver that, and that gives Aaron Rodgers a little time to kind of get up to speed with the rest of
I think so. I'm looking at it from A to Z, and there isn't really a weak spot here.
Maybe defensive tackle, but even then, Jaron Reed, who's a solid veteran, and Devontae White, who's a first-round pick,
I think just to be another year into Joe Barry's system helps. They're going to probably have to win games a little bit differently. They were a good defense last year for stretches. They certainly weren't the pass Packers where it's they're going to be the reason.
They were fine. They were average, yeah.
They weren't the liability though of years past to me. And I think the bigger questions are just on offense. It's I want to see down the stretch if these wide receivers actually equal DeAndre Hopkins. To me, I'm suspicious of this. We're saying that about 2 or 3 teams this offseason. It's just we will see.
I'm remembering now that
Dan is now napping.
The tug by timeout was kind of about you have to prove it to me. I've been through this before with you, but they can't do anything until January. So are you at a timeout for every episode every week?
A lot of content.
It would be a strong bit, to be honest. And hey, look, we can fill that time.
I don't know.
Offensive line going into the year, though, is their biggest question. I mean, to me, that's a bigger question. When you're a great quarterback, you can make your receivers better. You can't make your offensive line that much better if Elton Jenkins and Bakhtiari aren't healthy and the interior are just kind of a bunch of guys that are just guys. That's my bigger concern. If Jenkins and Bakhtiari are healthy, Super Bowl possibility, certainly.
Talk for 17 more seconds.
What, you got nothing
else?
No,
I want to see you just stretch.
I mean, Alan Lazard, you guys were giving him a lot of grief last episode. A lot of physical tools for a guy. Or maybe it was Weish and an old tugboat timeout.
I don't think I've mentioned Alan Lazard in months.
The Minnesota Vikings, Marc Sessler.
All right, it's early January. What are we saying about Kevin O'Connell? Is it closer to, wow, this Sean McVay tree is a beautiful thing of nature producing endless, juicy fruit? The latest example being O'Connell's ability to transform this Vikings offense into Rams North and helping Kirk Cousins to his mightiest season yet, turning Justin Jefferson into the Offensive Player of the Year, taking it to Green Bay in a huge Week 17 tilt at Lambeau. Wow, this was a great hire, and we dig the front office too. Or, seems like the same old team to me.
Well, I have them as a playoff team.
Well, they've been that before.
So I do think they'll be very competitive. I think they could be on both sides of the ball, but I do like. Here's the thing. I think you said an outstanding. What was the way you described Kirk Cousins' potential season?
Mightiest.
I don't think that exists. I think that's part of Kirk Cousins' charm. I think we're going to get the same Cousins that we always get, about 30 to 35 touchdowns, pass rating about 101 or so. He'll move the ball. He'll go into funks. He'll be unconscious for stretches. I think one big thing about their offense that they missed last year, and it explained their tailspin, was Adam Thielen getting hurt. I think he's such a great number 2. He's a perfect Robin to the Justin Jefferson Batman. And if you have those three, that big three with Dalvin Cook healthy and Cousins' ability to just put it on the money, they're a top 10 offense. Now, Greg, you like that? You like that? I think you would like that, Vikings fans. Is their defense, can they do enough to get them to 10 wins?
I'm not that excited about the defense. There's a case that they have a high upside, a high ceiling. The front, Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter, have been healthy this preseason. And if they're healthy and at their peaks, that's as good a duo as there is. And then inside, you've got Harrison Phillips and Dalvin Tomlinson, who are like really good run stoppers. And suddenly you got a little like Williams Wall, Vikings, in the Randy Moss era defensive line throwback situation going on. And you figure you can coach up the rest of it. Their defensive coordinator is Ed Donatel, who's sort of it's one of those guys that's been passed around and is in the system that Kevin O'Connell and Donatel both seem to me as they're sort of at the end of their coaching trees. It's like no one's even mentioned Kevin O'Connell. He's a young, strapping man from the McVay coaching tree, and yet they both seem like they were kind of the forgotten pickups from those coaching trees.
I mean, he'd been a bunch of places before the McVay thing too, and not shined as an offensive play caller. I can think of a couple stops. I mean, to me, this was the team of any team in the league outside of Jacksonville that most needed to make a coaching switch. Because when Mike Zimmer went out the door, all you heard was about the heaviness in the building, that it had just gotten too negative and too rough around the edges. Like veterans were saying, I think that the offense and Kirk Cousins he's a huge beneficiary of having someone that's going to come in the building and care about Kirk Cousins, because we spent all last offseason talking about the near melees between Zimmer and Cousins, and that whole, I know the COVID thing was part of it too. I ended that exactly on time, by the way. What the?
Let's take a break and then hit the NFC West. All right, let's close it out with starting with the defending champion Rams. This could be a good time for your Sessy stop. The Rams are the topic now, Marc.
No, because I would like you to know, everyone, that this whole me disliking the Rams thing is a fabrication at this point.
It's like me hating the Texans.
Right. I fight against this narrative because it's now not true.
All right, Greg, go ahead then.
Okay. Do you think that this Rams team could come out of the gates just on fire? They struck us, and they seem publicly about as confident as you could possibly be. They have a lot of continuity. They have a lot of star power, and there's this idea that it's hard to defend your title. Yes, to finish the deal.
It's a good idea. It's correct.
Okay, but how about how those teams recently have started the next season? The 2018 Patriots, I would say one of the worst recent champions, just as overall talent, actually started the next year 7-0, 9-0, with a house on fire. When the Chiefs were defending their title, they're scoring 40 points a game in September. The Bucs last season, to start the season, were scoring 30 to 40 points a game. Started fantastic. I think you get a certain sort of confidence, and you have a continuity where you're a step ahead of these other teams. It wouldn't surprise me at all for them to come into the season and look fantastic as one of the teams in the NFL.
I like this a lot, because I think if you read that feature that came out on Sean McVay a couple weeks ago, this is an obsessive individual, and I think the weight of that other Super Bowl loss and the seasons after affected him in ways that it wouldn't maybe a different type of coach and a different type of human being. And I know I've made this comparison before. if it all clicks, it's such a star-heavy roster. You kind of get that 88 Niners team where in 89 they came out and just blew doors off left and right. And if they can knock off the Bills in the opener a week from tonight, you get the Falcons, doable. Cardinals, doable. Niners, okay, tough. Cowboys, we'll see. Panthers, bye week. Niners again. And then the Bucks. You're talking 5-1, 6-1, potentially 7-0 type start if they're as good as we think they are.
Yeah, and of course, I do now need to see, now that they can't hide it anymore, how Matthew Stafford's going to look physically, because if he's not right, the whole thing's over. And that's part of like my overall feeling about the Rams is that, yes, it's all there. Everything's in place for them to make another deep playoff run and even win the whole thing. But there's a reason nobody repeats in the NFL, and it hasn't happened in almost 20 years, is that everything kind of has to fall into place. And I think that's how it worked for Los Angeles, and then they overcame some injury issues late in the season. But Aaron Donald's got to stay healthy. These guys are now starting to get a little bit older. And we got to see, is Cooper Kupp going to have the same season as he did last year? I like Allen Robinson a lot. Is that going to work out the way they wanted to?
Does he need to?
Everything worked out last year.
It worked out for them to win each one of those games close, but they were a good team. They were a streaky team, and I think they could be streaky, and I think it would be a positive streak to start the season.
Who's the running back, by the way? Who's like their guy?
It'll be Akers.
It's both of them, Henderson.
It's Akers and Henderson,
and
who are never healthy.
You're crossing your fingers they stay healthy.
Gregg, the Seahawks.
I'm going to make the case this team is fun to watch. People don't seem to be looking for, and it's not even going to use the G word.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm listening.
DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are still on this team, by the way. One of the best duos in the league. Mm-hmm. You got Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker. I think a really fun running back duo.
Okay.
And then more than anything, you got Pete Carroll in
post Russell Wilson.
Silver Fox. I don't give a
Sound like Deb Hanzus.
What mode. They didn't like each other, or at least they didn't like how the credit was apportioned, him and Russell Wilson. It's a little bit of like a Jimmy Johnson, Jerry Jones situation, but more polite about it. And what Pete Carroll did great once was take some interesting talent on defense and make it all work in a fun, sort of ugly way. I think he's got some players to do that with Jamal Adams. Hopefully he's healthy. Tariq Woolen, this freaky rookie who's probably going to start for them. They've got a lot up front. Poona Ford's a fun, I think actually the Pete Carroll revenge season could be a lot of fun. Noah Fant, how about that? A lot of fun.
Noah Fant, how about that? A lot of fun?
I'm just saying these are athletic players. I think they draft really athletic players, and so to me that's fun to watch.
A lot of athletic players in our league.
I have an olive branch for Gregg.
Especially athletic, like freaky sort of combine time types.
An olive branch for you. Because I am exhausted with my exhaustion towards Geno Smith. And so because I don't want to go into the season with any of that business. I want to just start fresh. So I am starting over.
You only have to get through about 4 weeks until Drew Lock.
Well, if either of them annoy me come the regular season, that's different. But he actually, I don't think, is getting quite the credit that he should for how he played in the preseason, Geno Smith. He was killed with drops, but he had the most big play throws of any quarterback in the preseason. I know he played a lot too, but it's a one-year patch, and it cannot be their long-term plan. But Geno Smith, along with everything you mentioned, you could see them not being a disaster. They can win games. They could win 9 games, 8. Dan?
Absolute ceiling is 9 games with Geno Smith and Drew Lock behind center.
It's the atypical not based around a quarterback team.
I'm raising it to 10. I just I like this Pete Carroll.
You did mention Noah Fant.
He's athletic. He's a mover.
Who's the movie star that your mom is into? Is it Richard Gere, I believe? Or was?
Well, she's into Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll.
Oh, I thought she had a big Richard Gere fascination.
No.
I just would like.
Did I cook that up out of nowhere?
I'd like to see him and Schneider. How about a Schneider revival? Schneider's been struggling lately. Old John Schneider, the shirt off in the locker room. This rookie class, on paper, could have a bigger impact than any rookie class in the NFL. They've got depth and they've got talent.
Where do they rank among your 12 favorite teams? That you have, you've adopted 12 teams at this point. You got 1 second.
4th.
Quick timeout here. Drew Lock's on this team because Russell Wilson was traded. Nice return on that deal. Get Drew Lock in your building. Can't even beat out Geno Smith. Okay. But good news for
they got some first-round draft. I don't think Drew Lock was the centerpiece of the deal.
I think they probably accepted to take Drew Lock.
I know, but they probably were like, oh, well, he could be our bridge guy, not Geno. Geno is our backup. And then they got to camp and they're like, no.
Who saw that coming?
Here we go, everyone. Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos agree to a 5-year extension worth $245 million, including $165 million guaranteed. So the Broncos, who have handled this beautifully every step of the way, they pulled the trigger on a blockbuster to get a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback with years of his prime left, and now they quickly take care of business. Baltimore Ravens, are you paying attention? And lock your franchise star up. Focus on football. Everybody wins.
Can't argue with that. I want to see the details of the $165 million guaranteed. I know that it said that. Sometimes you find out more after the fact. That's interesting to me because that is the second most highest amount of guaranteed money in the history of the NFL by quite a bit. Like Watson is number one by quite a bit, and now Wilson was almost sort of meeting the Watson deal.
Well, Kyler Murray is 189.5.
But that was a lot of fuzzy stuff in there too.
That's according to ESPN's report.
Yeah, the Kyler wasn't fully guaranteed, so I don't know. I'm interested in that, but what are you gonna do? You have to go all in. I just want to commend Kevin Patra for the lead in the article on NFL.com. Quote, Broncos country, let's sign.
Oh,
Quote,
well done, Patra.
Russell Wilson, probably.
Patra is a pro.
That is bonkers.
Country, let's ride.
It's so smooth. $165 million guaranteed. Russell Wilson, an established Pro Bowl quarterback, a Super Bowl champion, and Watson got $230. That was actually, to that point, it has not been the thing that the owners were afraid of to this point.
It's not. That's an interesting
where it's not everyone has to sign,
right.
These top guys, because even Russell Wilson.
Look, I think the Cleveland's owners are persona non grata among the other owners because of that contract, and I actually, it's the best possible result that you're not seeing any copycat scenarios contract-wise to that one.
Well, for the other owners, right.
Right.
Although not for the owner in Baltimore. So if you want to find one positive thing about the transaction that caused you to divorce the Browns forever, I guess it wouldn't be positive. But for Browns fans, it would be positive that I think it's preventing Lamar Jackson from signing in Baltimore. That's the reporting, is that he wants that fully guaranteed money, that the Ravens won't do it, and that's not going to happen before the season because of it. We'll see.
And by the way, this all happened in part because the Broncos, who had unsettled ownership issues, sold to Walmart heir Rob Walton and his group $4.65 billion.
He has the money to pay.
So
Russell Wilson.
Also, Russell Wilson's
their house is in order.
Yeah,
he's 33. I think the fact that even guys like Matt Ryan being 38, is he now 39, playing at his level, I think it's okay to change the timeline of quarterbacks.
Yes.
You are expecting Russell Wilson to be there for 5 years,
right? I feel like it used to be age 34. Maybe this is obviously just throwing numbers out there, but now it feels like age 38 you can get away with 37, 38.
Those guys were drinking 12 packs of beer in the offseason every night.
Rivers did it, Breeze did it. It's not rare.
All right, time in. Cardinals, me, Kyler, coming off a tumultuous offseason that ended with a massive payday and a since excised contract stipulation that essentially told the football world his team doesn't believe he works hard enough. That happened. That was the craziest story of our summer, I think. Anyway, I look at the Cardinals as presently constituted on offense. Can't help but see a remarkable amount of pressure and responsibility on Kyler Murray to make a Honda Civic move like a Ferrari. I'll put it that way. Hollywood Brown. You like Hollywood Brown? Do you love Hollywood Brown? James Conner? I know he had a lot of touchdowns last year. You love James Conner? Are you a Rondell Moore truther? Okay, he's a good second-year player. Zach Ertz with 90,000 miles on the odometer. How about A.J. Green? 130,000 on the odometer. I know Nuke Hopkins is coming back, but he's coming back from a PED suspension on the wrong side of 30. Just feels like Kyler, I'm not saying he's been put in position to fail, But this is going to be hard work in this division especially.
And this is a team that, I don't know if it's a Cliff Kingsbury thing. Obviously, they've come out hot seasons in a row and then faded. Without DeAndre Hopkins at it for 6 games, I don't like that 4 of your first 5 games include tilts against the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Rams, and the Eagles. That's a playoff run right there. And, there's a lot of pressure on someone like Rondale Moore to have a much bigger role than he did last year, to be used differently. They say they're going to do that. If there's an injury to James Conner, there's not much behind him at running back, and you're hoping the offensive line works out. I'm with you. I picked them as a playoff team because I do think that if they can make an adjustment to the way the end of these seasons seem to happen under Cliff Kingsbury, they're one of those teams that if Kyler Murray, if you get what you got from him for the first 12, 13 weeks last season, was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And I think that gets forgotten amidst the drama.
That's fair. I like what you did when you said their first 4 or 5 games, there's 3 tilts. Like you didn't reuse the word games twice.
That's right early.
Very right early. Like
that's
that
how
was
I operate.
You speaking as you would write. Your Kyler point about how he started last season, where he was kind of an MVP candidate, if you can start the race in the first half, is well made, because this is year 4 in the same system for a guy with all the talent in the world and a coach that's supposed to be an offensive coach. Like this is a guy that, in the money is what it is too, that should be able to be at that MVP level if he's as good as we think.
Fourth year
I think
in
he
the
has
system,
a chance.
Greg, but is it a good system? Like, is it proven that this is?
I have doubts.
It's not a disaster. I think they've got to find a way when everyone has tape on them come October,
I also
November.
think
Can
they're
you adjust?
extremely thin on defense at multiple positions. They traded for Trayvon Mullen from the Raiders this week because they don't have any cornerbacks.
Also, watch tape. Got to watch plenty of tape too.
Well, that would help. Maybe turn the Xbox off for 5 minutes.
I lured you into that jugular shot.
You threw me. Look, all right.
One more, the San Francisco 49ers. Marc.
All right. Trey Lance, as I mentioned yesterday, has thrown 389 live passes since high school. That's less than if you were playing football 3 times a week as a bro with your friends on the weekends. That's not a lot.
Well, he has probably done that in practice.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, in games.
No, actually, that's not true, Greg. He's never thrown more than that number.
He has played in 25 games since high school, okay?
Talk about not watching film. He's not even throwing.
It's only in games.
Nobody talks about it.
He's like, I'm a gamer. I don't
By
do
comparison,
this practice
Trevor Lawrence, he has played 25. Trevor Lawrence has played 53. Justin Fields, 46. Mac Jones, 47. Zach Wilson, 43.
Did you do this yourself?
No, it's research. Someone else did the math. I think that Kyle Shanahan has
How many throws for those guys?
I don't know the answer to that. And we are not. There's going to be no response period for you if you do not stop interrupting me. Okay. I just wonder.
Okay, Daddy.
Kyle Shanahan has seen him practice for over a year, seen him in limited game action. I have a point too. Started off real hot, and I thinking we've turned the corner with Trey Lance, and it did not finish that way. It was real up and down.
Can you wrap up the setup?
I'm annoyed now. I'm literally going to talk for the rest of the entire thing.
Do you worry that you're overemphasizing arcs of a preseason when it amounts to 15 snaps per game?
Well, that's your opinion. I am not worried. I'm not worried. I think people were over-worrying that Jimmy G did not have a playbook, and Kyle Shanahan just laughed that off. I'm just asking, do you think that Kyle Shanahan, who said a lot of nice things about Trey Lance, actually believes in him? And what would be the scenario? How bad would they need to start for the Trey Lance experiment just simply to end? Because that feels like a constant drumbeat scenario if he falters.
Best thing. Oh, go ahead.
I'm not done talking.
Oh, you're not?
No, I am.
Okay.
I just think 3 straight. If he's really struggling and they're 2 or 3 games under 500, that's it. It could be as early as October. I don't think that's going to happen.
Isn't that an organizational nightmare to bench the guy you gave
Not
3
really.
first round?
I don't think it'll happen.
That is. But I'm saying, if the goal, as it always is, ultimately is to win the Lombardi Trophy this year, like we talked about with Weiss, this is great news for the Niners. They have a fallback plan now, and it's a guy they know can get them where they need to go potentially, depending on how you feel about Jimmy G. But before that, it was this loaded team and a completely unproven guy. Now you have a backup. Now, is it a bad look for the entire organization if he bombs out?
It would be a terrible look.
Absolutely. But I love that they now have somebody they can turn to in case that happens.
But their roster is so loaded. Their defense it might be my pick as the best defense in the league going into the season. And I think their offensive talent, their offensive line is a concern. And Trey Lance was missing open receivers in the preseason, but it's a great roster. They can help the quarterback.
And that's why their season was over if Trey Lance can't play and doesn't develop this year. And now it's not. Now they have that backup.
Wait, do we have a timeout still left?
It's over.
Oh. No, I'm going to take one.
Go ahead.
I mean, the game is over.
We don't really need one. You can just talk now.
Yeah, it's over. Why?
Well, don't tell him.
Well, the 49ers' third-round pick from just a year ago, Trey Sermon, who was getting drafted awfully high in fantasy leagues a year ago, is now a member of the Eagles. They had talked trade at one point, but he actually got released quietly.
That's the most Shanahan thing, to release Trey Sermon in year 2 after he said a lot of nice things about Trey Sermon also.
Literally a week ago, he said, like, Trey is amazing. Trey is going to be a huge part of our team. And then I
guess if you're trying to trade him, that makes sense. But
yeah. Third-round picks are tricky because if it's a first or a second-round pick, in most cases, unless you're Alex Leatherwood, they're going to give you some rope. But once you get to that third-round pick, you see a lot of whiffs and quick hooks on those guys.
And to be fair, they drafted Elijah Mitchell in the exact same draft in the 6th round, and he's their starter, and I like him a lot.
It's a real meritocracy in
Steve.
San Francisco.
All right, that was Around the NFC in 48 minutes. Now, we turn our attention to next week. It's going to be wild. It's going to – wait, my headset's caught. Hang on. There we go. It's going to be wild because next week is the beginning of the regular season. So you'll hear from us next on Tuesday. This is crazy. Tuesday we're going to have the Around the NFL podcast. Tuesday we're going to have the finale of the Hard Knocks podcast with me and Connie. Tuesday we might even have the debut of another new podcast connected to the Around the NFL family that I'm going to hold on telling you more about at this time. We also have...
Tuesdays sound tough for you.
Wait, we have a regular Tuesday show, too.
And a regular Tuesday show. Thursday, we're going to have...
Sandwich props on Tuesday, by the way.
Sandwich props on Tuesday. Thursday is going to be our Week 1 preview show. Thursday night is going to be our TNF recap of what game?
Rams-Bills, we're there.
Rams-Bills!
We're going.
Maybe. And then Sunday, the return. Oh, excuse me, Friday.
Oh, Friday.
Friday. We have a Friday fun show every Friday this year. Me, Gregg, Marc, maybe some special guests. We'll have a fun little show that gets us into the weekend. You get that. More content.
We're like Friday, am I right?
Okay. And then Sunday, it is the return of the flagship show. Week 1 recap. That's a lot.
It is, but we're happy to provide the content for free.
We're testing your love, and we believe, listeners, that you love the show and want more content. And if you don't want to listen to each and every one, that's up to you, but there will be some that will love it. And that Friday show will be like a little smaller, shorter than the other shows. I think everyone who loves the show is going to love it.
Digger has something.
You didn't even mention the newest show, the other new show, Monday Night Recap, coming the day after that Sunday.
Do we have too many shows?
And Thursday night.
Yeah.
I said Thursday night.
Oh, okay.
6 shows per week coming this season.
And don't forget, Around the NFL, the TV show is back on NFL Network on Saturday, and that's going to be kind of a look back on the week that was on the podcast side of things. So a little bit of a different show than you had last year, but still a good way to see, the show from a different perspective. That's a lot.
It is. I'm slightly concerned.
What is it? Pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered?
And all the video shows can be viewed on the NFL Fast channel as well as listened to in audio. So
Good
do
plug.
both.
That's a good plug.
I've yet to get to the point where I'm, really sick of hearing myself talk. I haven't gotten to that point, but we're going to test it this year. So that's what this season's all about. We're going to test it.
Oh, by the way, Power Rankings is back next week and every week after that until January or February. And Marc, you're taking on QB Index. Does that roll out next week?
I believe it's the week. It's going to respond to the games after.
No, I think you do pre-week one.
If so, I've not been told.
Not a great start.
Not been
That's
told.
a big one. You want to like set the table of like here's what's the rankings going into the season.
I may ask the question of our editor if that's actually the case.
Put it this way.
It's always been on the schedule before.
And if I have to file a power rankings on Monday morning for games that haven't been played yet, you should have to file the QB index before games have been played.
I hate this for Marc because he would have already been done with it knowing Marc. He is a preparer and he gets things done ahead of time. And if he had known that was hanging, he would have worked on it this week, gotten it maybe out of the way somewhat.
Absolutely. That is the only tactical issue.
Maybe talk with our features editor, Ali Benpuri, about your assignments heading into the new season.
I mean, I have in the past. This wasn't mentioned, so.
Mm-hmm.
Just check that email, whatever he sent.
All right, there you go.
Sunday morning.
Thank you to everybody for listening. Thanks for the support. Thank you to Weish this week, Cynthia Freeland. Thank you very much, Cynthia. You're the best. Until next week, heed the call.